Okay, so to calculate the bin width, you need to look at your data and see how many pieces of data you have, because the bin width, did you look in your notes for the bin width?
I did,
What did you find?
and where did I write that down? Oh no, where's my other paper? Oh, I did have it. It was so pretty too. They're all color coded.
Oh no.
Okay, I don't know where it is.
Do you remember anything about bin width?
It was.
It's a formula.
The weird formula with the Z thing or the
No.
E?
No, none of that. It's just the max value minus the min value, and all of that is divided by the number of intervals.
Okay.
Okay, so that's how you determine how wide your bins are going to be. So like each little rectangle,
yeah,
that's a bin.
Okay.
So can you give me the max value of this data?
The max, is that going to be the highest number or all the numbers?
The highest number.
Is 17.
That's right. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this data because we'll need it to do a bit of work after. So what's your minimum value?
1.
Okay. So basically here what you do is you go 17 minus 1, and then you divide that by how many intervals is this asking?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right? It says in the question 2.
Oh, 5.
Yeah.
5.
So we do 17 minus 1 divided by 5. What's 17 minus 1?
16.
Okay. 16 divided by 5.
Point something? Or something point something?
Yep.
Right?
And what is that? Do you have a calculator with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
3.2.
3.2. Okay, so what happens here is if you do bins of 3, you're not going to you're not going to have 5 intervals. You're actually going to have 6, I believe. So let's say go from 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 12, 12 to 15. You don't get to 16 and 17, and you need those, right? So what we do is instead of doing bin widths of 3, we'll do bin widths of
1?
No. So
5?
well, think about it. Instead of 3, what can we round up to?
4?
Yeah. So normally we don't round up if it's 0.2, right?
Oh, okay.
But in this case, because we're talking about bin widths, 3 isn't working, so 4 is the one that's going to work.
Okay.
So what we're going to do here is we're going to pick those intervals. We're going to start from 0, and from 0 to what?
0 to 5, 4.
0 to 4. So I'm just going to make this a bit bigger because I'm writing with my hand here. So 0 to 4. Okay, what's the next one?
4 to 8.
Okay, next.
8 to 12.
Keep going.
12 to 16. 16 to 20.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to finish writing that out. But there's a problem if we do this. And the problem becomes that you have some data, and I'll show you in a second here. You have some, oh my goodness. You have some data that falls exactly on those points. So basically what you need to look at is your coordinates, and say, not your coordinates, or your data, and say, okay, if I group it this way, which there's no problem with what you just did, no problem, because that's 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem becomes when you look at your data again. I'm just going to come down here and maybe paste the data for you. So if you look at the data, see how there's an interval of 8 with the very first piece of data?
Mm-hmm.
Well, where does that go? Does it go in 4 to 8 or 8 to 12?
Oh.
Right. So what you need to do here is you need to use the brackets. And I know this was in the content. I'm just not sure if you maybe took enough time to...
The sum of relative frequencies, that one?
No, not yet. So we're talking about just brackets. And when we're talking about brackets, oops, the round ones mean do not include, and the square
Okay.
ones mean yes
Oh
include.
yeah, I did see that. I
Okay,
didn't know what they meant. I didn't think I read what they meant, but okay.
so now you know that that means that the 8 will actually go in the second
Yeah.
interval and not the third, because the round bracket means do not include and the square bracket means yes include it. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, now you could use decimals. Like you can go from 0.5 to 4.5,
Uh-huh.
4.5 to 8.5 in order to avoid this whole bracket situation.
Okay.
But the bracket situation is fine. But if we do decimals, you don't risk anything because there's no decimals in our data, right? So you don't have to worry about having two intervals for one piece of data.
Okay. So if there was decimals, you just do 0.5?
Yeah, but you could do decimals here too.
Okay.
It would just mean that your 8 would go in a certain interval and it wouldn't belong to two of them.
Okay.
So now that I used the bracket, we avoided that problem. So you can pick. You can use the brackets or you can use decimals to avoid the problem in total, okay?
Okay.
So let's go ahead and do the first two columns or whatever you want to call that. So what's the midpoint between 0 and 4?
2.
How did you find that?
The middle of 0 and 4 is 2. 4 divided by 2. 4 divided to 2 is 2.
That's right. Yeah. So it's 0 plus 4 divided by 2. Okay?
Okay.
So I just want to make sure you know how to do it because these numbers are easy, but what if you get numbers that are not so easy?
Okay.
So for the interval of 4 to 8, you add them up. So 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 divided by 2 is?
6.
So the midpoint is 6. So you keep going like that all the way down, okay? Now, let's count. What? Sorry?
Oh, I just said uh-huh.
Okay, so for the tally, we actually need to go count how many pieces of data are between 0 and 4 and include.
I have order right here, so I can do that quickly. 0 and 4, there's 1, 2, 3, 4.
There's 4? For sure?
Yeah, because I have them in order from doing the mode thing.
Okay.
Or whatever,
I just want to double check. I'm pretty sure I remember that being the case there. From 0 to 4, right?
Yeah, because there's 1, 1, 1, 2, and 3, or 2, 2, 3s.
Okay, I'm like having a hard time erasing. Okay, hold on. Ah! Okay, I can't erase anything. And I crossed out the 5s, which is not good because the 5s aren't supposed to be in that interval. So, I'm just gonna give me one quick second.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna fix that. Okay, so I had to go ahead and erase the 5s. I did that, and now I'm back to counting how many are between 0 and 4. How many did you say? 4?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So if I go back up here, the tally are actually like little sticks. So what you do here is you just put 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay?
Okay.
And frequency is where you put 4.
Okay.
And then this is the part where most people struggle in. Is this where you were kind of struggling?
Yeah.
Okay. So relative frequency is just is the frequency over the entire number of data. So we have 4 over here over how many pieces of data do we have?
Didn't we already write that down? 17?
No. 17 was the maximum value.
Oh, right. So there is 6, 7, 8, 39, 40.
Yeah.
It said that above on top.
Oh,
right.
Okay. So there are 4 pieces of data. And then here's the tricky part. The cumulative frequency just means that you take the relative frequency and you accumulate it with the one prior. So is there a relative frequency prior to the one that we just did? Do you see a column above it?
No.
Right. So it's not accumulating anything. So in this case, it's still 4 over 40. Okay?
Okay.
So, oh my gosh. So that part is a little bit confusing. But
So
just know the first one, you don't even need to write it, really.
Okay.
Okay? So now let's do the second one a bit more quickly. So between 4 and 8, how many pieces of data are there? How many?
6.
6. So to write, oh my goodness. I wish I had my...
Do you just like 1, 2, 3, and then 4, put a line through it for 5?
Yes.
Or just, yeah.
Like that. Okay, so it happens 6 times, right?
Yeah.
What's the relative frequency?
6 over 40.
Good. Now we have a cumulative frequency. What will it be?
Then it's 10 over 40.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So you just keep accumulating it, and at the end, what do you think you're going to end up with your relative frequency?
40, 40.
The cumulative one should be 40 over 40.
Yeah.
But the relative frequency, when you add up your top numbers,
would be 20.
When you add them all up, once you're done, it should be 40.
Okay.
Because if you have 4 in the first interval, 6 in the second, you have to, right? You have to take care of every single one, right? So I'm gonna encourage you to try the rest on your own, but I want to go through the rest with you. So to produce a histogram, I'm using Fathom, and you should be using Fathom as well. Yeah. Good. Okay. So to use Fathom, basically what you need to do is take out a new table. What are these pieces of data for? Do you know?
I don't think it just said 40 or weekly number of hours spent exercising.
Okay, so I'll just put hours for the data.
Okay.
And then let's say I'm just gonna make these up, okay?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep doing this. I'm not gonna put 41 because I know our top value was 17. Okay, so let's say this is your data, okay? I totally made this up. So don't panic, yours will not look the same. So when you bring a graph down over here, basically what you do is you take your hours and you drag them over to the bottom here. So then you select histogram. Oops, wrong one. And this is a lot of bins. Yeah. So I don't remember how to change the bin. Let me play around with that for a second. So to change the bin width, you double click on the graph, and then you go to bin width and you change it to 4, because that's what you want for your bin width. You had to calculate that yourself by hand, and there it is. Okay, so it would show you how many pieces of data are in each interval. So there's one piece of data between, looks like about 7 to 11 and some, but this is your histogram. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So now moving on, it's asking us to determine the mean interval. So the mean interval is a formula, I think, and that is in the content. So let's just go back and look at it.
Yeah.
You know what page it's in?
No, it's the N over the upside down E X I.
Okay, give me one quick second. Okay, so here's the content on finding the mean for the grouped data. So finding the mean of grouped data is not the same as finding the mean for ungrouped data. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a midpoint in our data. We have a frequency in our data. You're just going to make a new not a new table, but a new column called F times M.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we just did this for the first 2 pieces of data. So then what you do is you have to take what you just calculated and work with that. So the formula says to do F times M, right? Once you've done all of that, what you do is you're going to add them all up. And that's the weird E right here. That means the sum of, okay? Okay.